Traders, how are you? Marcello here, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Absolutely excellent time in Philippines. We're getting our day trading center started out here with one of our master traders named Dominic. Super fun story. If you guys want to hear it, I think I'm going to do a separate video talking about the process here, all the videos I took. So let me know if you guys want to see it. Don't forget the podcast is available. I see thousands of you guys listening to it every week. So iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys want to find it, it should be available for you. And also, don't forget to subscribe here to the channel on YouTube if you're listening there. I changed my my Instagram profile. It's Marcello Arrambide English if you guys want to find me there as well, since I upload these videos there as well. Overall this week, the Monday markets are up. Obviously, this is because of a deal between the U.S. and Mexico. If you guys remember, Trump wanted to start levying tariffs on the products from Mexico if the president or the country didn't help with the illegal immigration into the country. The S&P 500 rose for a fifth session in ongoing stock rally led by chip makers and auto companies. The Dow, which is one of the main stock indexes in the U.S. and obviously the world, due to the fact that the U.S. is still the central financial hub or the main economy in the world, even though China is rising. The Dow went up for the sixth day in a row. U.S. stock market ended lower on Tuesday and Wednesday, more than anything due to the fact that obviously because of the news that went on. I'll give you guys a little bit more details on that. Oil price surge gave a boost to the U.S. stock market on Thursday. That went up. They were negative overnight, and obviously that was mostly because of the attack on the tankers, the oil tankers off the coast of Iran. If you guys remember, I did tell you guys that was going to happen, I would say, I think October, November of last year. If you guys want me to find the video, I will. I don't know if any of you guys actually remember that. On Friday, Broadcom, which is a behemoth when it comes to chip makers and telecommunications makers, cut its annual sales outlook. They said that they're going to make $2 billion less due to the ban on Huawei. Remember, Huawei now is the second largest smartphone maker in the world. They're also a very big telecommunications company. So now Broadcom is not allowed to sell products to Huawei. I think a lot of American companies now are not allowed to. Then they're going to miss out on a lot of that revenue. Stock is down over 6%, dragging many of its peers with it as trade risks escalate. And overall for the week, the Dow was up 0.41%, the S&P 500 0.49%, and the Nasdaq went up 0.71%. In overseas market news, obviously the Mexico deal affected the overseas markets as well. The peso in Mexico rose by more than a year, by most in a year. Hong Kong strike and protest. There's, if you guys don't know, Hong Kong was ran, let's say, by the British, if I'm not mistaken, until 1997. Then they passed it to China. China not wanting to change things right away, they made an agreement to keep Hong Kong mostly as it was until, if I'm not mistaken, I looked this up, 2047. So little by little, China's kind of wanting to put their stamp on Hong Kong. The people in Hong Kong obviously don't want that because they have the great way of life, right? And so China wants to pass a law saying that if you're guilty of a crime, you can actually be extradited to mainland China. So obviously the people in Hong Kong don't like that because they have a much different view of how things should work than China. Obviously China runs things a little bit differently in the mainland as well. And so there was a huge 7-day protest, there was a huge protest this week in regards to that. More than anything on Tuesday and Wednesday, actually just when I left Hong Kong. I don't know if you guys saw the pictures on Instagram, amazing places we were able to stay at, and that actually put an end to a 7-day global rally in stocks. European markets this week were mixed. Italy went up, the biggest winner, 1.23%. Istanbul, Turkey went down, the biggest loser, 3.33%. In Latin American markets, the Argentine Merval was the biggest winner, 13.53% positive. The Mexican exchange went down 0.37. In the African and Middle Eastern markets, Nigeria went down 1.28%. Saudi Arabia, the biggest winner, at 5%. And Asia and Australia, the Chinese SEC went up 1.91%. Singapore, a huge financial hub, went up 1.8%, and Malaysia went down 0.61%. In Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news, Facebook is backed by a dozen firms to launch its new cryptocurrency, including Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Uber. They're going to invest nearly $10 million each in a consortium which is going to allow them to govern the digital coin now called the Libra. Overall for the week, Bitcoin went up 8.11% to $8,614.99. In financial news, corporate America set aside its biggest spending increases for shareholders. The net share buybacks of their own stock spiked 99% to a record $467 billion in 2018. The tech firm splurged $260 billion on buybacks. Apple bought 71 billion shares in 2018. Corporate America, collectively, their debt remains very, very high. Total debt for non-financial U.S. entities went to $5.65 trillion at the end of 2018. Just if you guys don't remember, if you take out debt, you have to pay it back. So one of the things that is interesting in this scenario, and what I've talked about before in terms of the debt problem that we have right now, not only in the United States but the world, is if there is a recession in 2020 or 2021, which I've mentioned several times, basically, a lot of companies are going to have a very big problem servicing this debt, and a lot of companies might actually go bankrupt during this, okay? U.S. companies are not the only ones that are having problems with the debt. The U.S. government racked up a deficit of $208 billion in May. They took in $232 billion, but they spent $440 billion. The first time in U.S. history that the federal government has $3 trillion in debt in the first 8 months of the fiscal year. Like, soon we're going to, a year from now, we're going to be talking, the U.S. government took in quintillion, bajillion of debt. I just don't understand how this is sustainable, but the yield curve for the yields also are mostly inverted. If you guys remember the lesson that I gave you between the short-term yield curve or the short-term interest rate on the debt in the United States, like a 3-month government yield, government bond, for example, if that goes higher than the long-term debt, the interest on the long-term debt, so if that goes down to, for example, the 5-year, if it goes like that, then they're inverted, and that's generally a indication of a recession coming up. In U.S. crude oil futures, they went up during the attack that we had that they're blaming on Iran. 2 oil tankers were attacked. If you guys know the Gulf of Hormuz, which is where they were attacked, they're near Iran. 30% of seaborne crude is actually ran through that area. U.S. crude went down 3.03%. International Brent went down 2.21%. Daily oil production in the United States went up by 2.2 million barrels in 2018, the largest ever annual increase by a single country. The Permian Basin, which is the main area in West Texas that produces the oil in Texas, accounted for nearly all of the planet's output and growth. U.S. production spiked by more than 7 million barrels per day since 2012, which is the equivalent of all Saudi Arabian exports. And U.S. output now is on track to surge to 13.4 million barrels per day by the end of 2019. Texas alone is set to top 5 million barrels per day. Put that in a perspective. Just Texas almost now produces as much as the exports of Saudi Arabia. 5 and 7, right? It's amazing. U.S. ingenuity, baby. So that, more than anything, is contributing to the supply glut in oil. So even though, for example, we had the situation with the oil tankers being attacked, notice we have a little bit of a surge, but then, South Africa's struggling gold industry lost its status as the continental leader to Ghana. The South Africa actually used to have they used to be the biggest miners of gold in the world. They've actually extracted 50% of the bullion mined to date in the world. And now they're actually moving behind Ghana, another country in Africa, as the number 2 producer in Africa. Chinese is extending its gold buying spree as well. They added a reserve for 6 straight months. Obviously, due to the trade war, they're looking to diversify their reserves. And that's also hurting their growth expectations as well, because who buys all the Chinese stuff made in China? mostly the U.S. Obviously, there's other countries as well, but a lot of times it's the U.S. Set for its fourth weekly gain, gold jumped to 1,359.50. It surpassed the key level of 1,350 for the first time since April 2018. And obviously this had to do because of the Middle East tensions, the Hong Kong protests. You can see just a little bit of problems in the world, and immediately the precious metals spike. And if you guys want me to do a follow-up on that video that I did about how I'm trading right now with silver and the analysis on the charts, let me know here in the comments. I'll be happy to do that for you. I also, just if you guys are watching as well, I was also thinking about doing several different kinds of videos about investments and things like that, especially now since I'm traveling around the world more for business rather than pleasure. I thought about doing a video on investing in real estate and other things, starting a business in Vietnam and Philippines, what I've learned over the last few months, or the last few weeks, I should say, being in this part of the world. So if you guys would like to see those videos as well, let me know in the comments, okay? Overall for the week, gold went up 0.09%, silver went down 0.87%. In political news, we talked about what happened in Hong Kong. There was more than 500,000 people that took to the streets. French President Macron, because you know how the French are, you know, Macron. They said that, he said, I should say, that he will support German Chancellor Merkel's term that ends in 2021 if she decides to succeed Jean-Claude Juncker. I hope I said it right for you French guys watching the video, whose term is going to expire in October as the president of the European Commission. In economic news, April U.S. jobs openings were at 7.448 million with a U.S. unemployment rate of 3.6%. There are now over 1 million more jobs available than people are available to fill them. India's economic growth slumped to 5.8% in Q1 due to a change in how they calculated the GDP. They lost the title of the fastest growing economy in the world, but their numbers may already be overstated as it is. In corporate news, United Technologies and Raytheon are joining forces to create an aerospace and defense behemoth. They're going to create one of the largest corporate mergers in 2019 in an all-stock deal. The new company is going to have a revenue of $74 billion, and together they're going to be worth about $166 billion in market valuation. And Beyond Meat, the company that soared this year after the IPO, they went up 570%. They're a company that actually makes fake meat, or meat made out of plants. They are saying, well, one of the things that you should know, first of all, if you're going to invest in this company, obviously we're not trading advisors, right? So I can't tell you where to invest or not, so make sure you do your own research. But they are not profitable yet, and they actually went down on Tuesday 25% after JP Morgan Chase changed their rating to neutral, and they recovered a little bit as well. In trade news, American retailers, manufacturers, and tech firms are warning Trump that the tariffs that he put on China are actually going to damage the U.S. economy and lead to job losses. There's over 600 firms and trade associations, including also Walmart, Costco, and Target, that wrote to Trump urging him to remove the import taxes on the Chinese goods. Vietnam found fake product origin certificates and illegal transfers of actual Chinese-made products. These are actual Chinese firms trying to avoid or sidestep the U.S. tariffs, because obviously if it says made in China, you got to pay the taxes, and if they just swipe the tag and said made in Vietnam, they don't have to, right? So it's rare that an Asian government actually publicly alleged such misbehavior. Over the past 5 years, U.S. Defense Advanced Research Project agencies, or they're otherwise known as DARPA. Now you guys know what it means. U.S. Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, U.S. Defense, why do all the agency names in the government always have to be like the biggest, most advanced terms available? So DARPA has invested $77 million to develop devices intended to restore the memory generation capacity of people with traumatic brain injuries. The last year, 2 groups conducting tests on humans published compelling results. What they're actually going to be able to do is have like a virtual brain prosthesis, and then you literally are just going to be able to take it out and put it back in. So you're literally going to be able to upgrade your memory over time, which is really interesting. Swedish telecom equipment maker Ericsson, early momentum in consumer enthusiasm means a switch to 5G is occurring faster than anticipated. By 2024, or 45% of the world's population is going to be able to access 5G networks. It's about 1.9 billion people, up 27% from the earlier estimate. Huawei's foldable phone called the Mate X, which is going to be 5G capable and also selling for a very low price of $2,600. They're actually going to delay the launch of the event to September, saying that they don't want to launch a product to destroy their reputation, because you guys know that Samsung tried to launch their product and then they were having problems with it. In investment news, E3 Gaming Conference kicks off in Los Angeles on Tuesdays. There's a lot of companies that are launching different products and talking about their announcements. Microsoft is offering a new Xbox that's going to launch in 2020. Nintendo also is expected to focus largely on games. Following its record $25 billion float in New York, Alibaba, which is one of the largest IPOs on record, is now going to do a follow-up listing in Hong Kong to raise another $20 billion, providing obviously more capital for them to fund new initiatives like cloud computing and also the Hema supermarkets. Upping the criticism of the new gas pipeline called Nord Stream 2 being led by the Russian energy giant Gazprom, Trump is looking at sanctioning to block the new natural gas pipeline. Obviously, Trump doesn't want this because he doesn't want Russia to continue to have a hold on the energy in Europe. Because obviously, if Russia has Europe, like, I don't want to say it on video, but you know what I mean. If Russia has them controlled by the neck, instead of another thing that's more important, if Russia's controlling the energy sector in Europe, that can literally cripple the economy just like this. So Trump is saying that he wants to be able to stop that from happening. Now, East European, Nordic, and Baltic Sea regions see the pipeline as a way of increasing Russia's tightening economic grip on Europe. BrandZ, which is a market data firm, says that upon the financial data and consumer surveys determining on how companies actually rank, the 5 tech firms took the top 5 positions for the 2019 rankings based on brand value. Amazon is actually number 1 now at $315.5 billion, then Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Visa. International events, representatives of the EU's national governments gathering are going to decide whether to actually start disciplinary actions against Italy because of their rule-breaking debt levels. Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini is actually chosen to play the standoff approach, saying that they can probably still compromise in the end. Iran is going to ask Japan to mediate between the Iranian government and the Trump administration to ease oil sanctions. Iranian officials said ahead of the event, with the meeting that he's going to be having with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And an unusual fact this week, a masterpiece by Leonardo da Vinci, which the whereabouts was a mystery after being purchased in 2017 for a record $450 million, has turned up in a likely place. In the super yacht of the Serene, it's called, owned by the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The 500-year-old painting is called Salvator Mundi. And the global carbon emissions spiked in the most in 7 years, as BP's annual review of the world energy is saying that the emissions spiked by the most in the last 7 years, and they indicate that the world is falling behind on its efforts to rein in on global climate change. They also say that China, India, and the United States were responsible for 2/3 of the 2.9 increase in consumption. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We're finishing up our time here in the Philippines, getting the business started with our traders here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. The Instagram now is going to be called Marcelo Arrambide English if you guys want to do that. And we'll see you next week.